Yeah, I actually developed this new web CTagger for the launch of this conference. So the audience of this conference have an exclusive premier preview of the web tool. But yes, I will be going over a live tutorial of annotating a simple head annotation using the annotation tool that we developed, and more specifically the CTagger annotation tool. Um, just some conceptual overview. So you have heard Kay and Scott talk about the event.tsv file in bits, which is essentially the tab separated tabular file to store your event markers during the experiment. So each row will be an onset, and the columns would then describe these markers in details. Right? And you have multiple columns. The column can be categorical or continuous to capture different aspects of these event markers. And then we also have the event JSON to describe more in general terms the columns in the event.tsv file. And the JSON file are dictionary key value file. The main level of the key would be the column name itself. So for example, we have the event type column here. And then the child key would be the two main ones that we want to focus on are the levels and head. And so levels will contain the text description of the column values in the event type column here, for example. So it can be any free-form text string. It doesn't have to be structured. It doesn't have to be format. You can put in as many details as you want for these column value. And this is very important aspect, and you will see later on because it's easily readable for people, but also we will be using them in the future to help guide our annotation process. And then the head key would contain the actual head annotation associated with each value in the column. And so the tagging process will then be you essentially adding annotation into this head key for each of the column value for the data set. And once you've done your annotation, you can save the event.json file at the top level of your bits directory. And that can be just your single event.json file that describes the entire experiment. And it will be applied to all the event.tsv file in your bits dataset. So you don't have to have multiple event.json file for each level of bits. You just need to have one single top level event.json file that describes your whole experiment or your whole task and place at the top level of the bits directory. And you can update it very easy on later on. So yeah, essentially the tagging process will just be preparing this one single event.json file. And again, we have the head vocabulary. Kay already went into details. Just want to quickly remind you that the head vocabulary is organized in a hierarchical manner. So in a tree structure, we call them the head schema. And the head tags are nodes in the schema. You can specify a head tag using the full path down the tree. So for example, event sensor event, or you can just use the single node name, for example, sensor event to represent that head tags. And Kay already mentioned, this hierarchical structure is very useful for downstream search and analysis. And that's why, we have this organization in a hierarchical manner. And head annotation are comma separated string of head tags, right? And then you can also group tags that relate to each other in parentheses, and that become a tag group in a head terminology. You already seen this slide from Kay. I just want to remind that the basic workflow to work with head in BIS is essentially, again, you have your event TSV file. You create then the event JSON file to describe the column in the TSV. And then you fill in the head annotation for each of the column and the column value in the JSON file. And the analysis tools, the head tools will assemble the head annotation for each event marker. And that become your entry point and later on do downstream epoching analysis based on head tags. So our annotation then workflow, and which I will go over in the live demo, is again, you take the BIS data set, you generate the template from the events file to get the template event JSON sidecar. And then you will import this JSON sidecar into our annotation tool, CTagger. And we'll also have other resources to guide your tagging process. And then you have your annotated event JSON file and you put it back to the BIS directory. And now you have a fully head annotated BIS data set to start working on and share with other people. So we used to have a Java desktop app version of the tool CTagger, which stands for Community Tagger, with a tool, a GUI tool that we developed to help assist with the tagging process, to make the tagging process easier for people. It's still available as a standalone app, and especially integrated with the EG Lab plugin head tools. However, as time developed, Java become a very complicated and cumbersome language to deploy and program in, because the Java virtual machine require extra installation step for people if they want to use a standalone app. The UI library is very primitive, so it takes a lot of time, and it also doesn't have much support for developing UI features. And then, as Kay had mentioned, we have a lot of head tools developed in Python, and working with Java make it very hard to integrate the Python code base to include the new features in head. And then lastly, we also want to start integrating more large language model capacity to help with the annotation process. And a lot of library available is through Python. So we decided to switch to develop a web CTagger. And so because it's going to be a web app, it will be deployed easily on the web browser. You can just call a URL and you have the web CTagger available for you to start your annotation. And we set it up in the way that it can easily integrate with the Python code base in the server. And because of that, we can use any of the head Python tool as well as integrating the LLM capacity. And this is the beta mode for the web CTagger. I just finished it for this conference demoing, so we haven't fully deployed it yet. It's still under development, but will be launched very soon after the conference. So I will now switch to give you a live demo of the web CTagger and an example of tagging through a simple experiment. Let me share this screen. So here's the web CTagger interface, and we will be using a example data set from EG Lab. And this experiment, we will focus on describing two very straightforward event types, the square and RT. Well, the square will be the presentation of the square, and RT will be a button press response to a certain aspect of the square. So I already generate the event.tsv file from the EG Lab dataset. So you can start with uploading the event.tsv file.
Jan, can you just mention, sorry, how you can do that from a set file? How you can just for the sake of completeness, how you can create like from set file you can get the events.tsv.
Yeah, we have Python tools, and we also have Python written in MATLAB tools to do that. It's a couple of line of code, which I don't have it live right now, but we will have it in the documentation in more details about that. I
think Beats EEG also can just basically create, like, you can convert any data sets to a bits format, and then you will have an events.tsv.
Right. So I guess I can also say that in EG Lab itself, we have BIS.io tools to convert back and forth between EG Lab study and BIS dataset. So let's say you have a EG Lab study, like let's say your EG Lab dataset is part of the EG Lab study. You can use our BIS tools to export that EG Lab study into a BIS dataset, and in that dataset, then all the EG Lab event structure already convert into event.tsv file, and you can just take the event.tsv file from there and continue on.
Thanks.
Yeah. But in the future, I will include a function onto the CTagger to have people able to upload, let's say, a .set file, and then we'll automatically extract the TSV file from there as well. But yeah, so given that you have a event TSV file, if you don't have the event JSON file yet, you can use our online tools to generate the sidecar template by uploading the TSV file. And it will ask you to select which column and whether they're categorical column. Once you process, then it will ask you to save the template event JSON sidecar. So I have created a event JSON file already to scaffold part of the process to make the tutorial on time. But essentially, I took the sidecar generated from the online tools from a TSV file, and then I start describing the column and the column value already. So with the web CTagger, you start with upload your event JSON file. And then once it's uploaded, then you can view the content of event JSON file in the panel here. And then when you select different column and the column value in the drop down menu above, it will pull the information out from the event JSON file and then display accordingly depending on the value that you have selected for that for the selected column. So for example, here now we choose the square value of the column type, and we have the text description pull out from the levels view for this square. And then we have the head annotation, which I already prepared for this column value, right? When you make any edit in the text box above, it will immediately reflect in the JSON view below. So there is a live view of all the action you are doing your annotation. It will automatically record all your annotation live. So same thing for the tag, for example. Okay. So at any point during your annotation, you can click the validate button, and it will validate entire event JSON file, and it will tell you, okay, what error or what issue might there be with your annotation. And right now it's complained that the RT column value has not been annotated. So we'll annotate the RT value as our example for today tutorial. Okay, so now we go into the annotation process. Let's click the RT value. So the description is the participant press button, right? Now we start finding the head tags to describe, to capture this description. We include a quick link. We include a quick link to the annotation guide available online for you to view to help you jumpstart the annotation process. And as you can read here, for example, like the first step that everybody should do when they annotate any event is to choose an event category to capture like the main type of event there is. And you can use the schema browser to read the description of different category and see whether they apply to your case. And so we included the schema browser directly into the web CTagger. This is a simplified version of the full-fledged online schema viewer. But essentially, you can still browse any subtree of the schema, and then as you hover to any item in this tree, it will show you the description of the tag, and you can read through it and see which tag you might want to use for your annotation. Let me upload it again. So let's say we are annotating the button press events, and now we hover to the agent action, and it meant to describe any action that performed by the subject. So we want to choose this tag, and you can simply double click on the tag, and it will automatically add to your head annotation for you. So now we have that first tag in. We can continue on our guide. And so we have a table here that guide you. Let's say now you have chosen the category. What other additional information you might want to include to capture the details of that event, right? So we read through the agent action part of the table. So we want to describe, who might be the agent that performed this action, what action was performed, what was the action target. So, what object or what item that the action has been performed on, and potentially what is the meaning of the action with respect to the task itself. All right, so we'll start one by one. So let's say who's the agent. And so it suggests that you can use like the task agent task row in here. So we can search for agent task row, right? And then when you search, it will pull you down to this agent task row subtree, and then you can select, the one that might be the case. So here's the agent are the experiment participants. So we'll choose that tag, for example. And then what action was performed? So the action was pressing a button. So let's look for the action press in the schema. Right, a couple of options. Let's choose we can choose whichever one. I choose the most straightforward one. Apply pressure, maybe on the key press or mouse click. Okay, that's describe our mouse press. Say what is the action target? So you're pressing what? You're pressing a button. So let me also add the button tag. And so when I look for button in here, there are a couple of options, mouse button or push button. In this case, I believe mouse button was the one that we use in the experiment. So I add that also into annotation. And then the tricky one usually is the task relationship. So let's go to the schema and explore, what tags might be available to describe the relationship of with respect to the task. So we have task action type, supposed to contain tag that how the agent action should be interpreted in terms of the task specification. And we have a couple of tags available here for our options. And since we don't really know, just from the event description from the experiment itself, whether a RT button press event is a correct or incorrect action, we cannot really add any of these tags here, right? Because we cannot say that it is a correct action. It's simply that we record that the participant just pressed a button. So we cannot really choose any of these tags. There's a more general subtree for task relationship, which is the task event role subtree. And in here, we found the tag participant response. So at least with respect to the task, we know that these are participant response event. So we can choose this tag for our annotation. And that basically capture most aspect of this button press event for our experiment. And obviously you can try to include more tags as you go. If you have more information about these events themselves, I will also group these two tags together because they belong. They relate to each other, right? We describe the mouse button press, so I will group them together. So you can see here in the event JSON view, all annotation is reflected in the file, and then we can validate our annotation, for example. And now we have no issues. If you had misspelled any tag, for example, then it will tell you that this tag has been misspelled or not in the schema, right? So it's a helpful thing that you can use during your annotation. And so we essentially now have a the most simple version of our annotation for this experiment. And once you've happy with your annotation, you can save your event JSON file in your bus directory. and that become your annotated experiment. We have a view below as well for you to upload a sample TSV file of the experiment that correspond to this and the JSON file above. And then you can view the assemble head tags for each row of the event after your annotation. And you can kind of quickly now, see if you start analyzing your data set, these tags for these rows would be the one that you'll be looking for to extract these events. Lastly, there are two features. So you can see that tag group, if you have a lot of, so tag group can be nested. So you can have tag group within tag group. And if you have a lot of nested level of grouping, it will be a little bit hard to view. So we have a feature to also automatically indent the tag group as a hierarchical level. So like, the children will be indented from the parents. So you can toggle that mode while you view your annotation. And then another features that we are in development is to integrate LLM, large language model, to help scaffolding our annotation. And again, I want to remind that it's still an experimental feature. So not all the tags that are going to be suggested by the AI assistant will be correct. So we should definitely view them and double check on them before we use it for our final annotation. But so essentially, once you click on that button, suggest tags, it will pull out the description of whichever column value you're being selected. Right now is the RT column value. And then it will, when you click on the suggest tags button, it will take the description and it will query, and I'm using OpenAI GPT model. I feed the model also the head schema and a couple example of annotation, and now it generate this tag suggestion for you to kind of scaffold your annotation process. So based on the agent suggestions, it already tell us that we should, try to capture who is the participant, who's the agent, what action there was, what object was being performed on, and maybe something about the task relationship, right? So, but you can see down here, we include immediately the validation issues returning to this annotation. Again, because we know that the AI assistant can generate tags that are invalid. So that's why you cannot just copy and paste directly this suggested annotation to your events. But already you can start using this as a suggestion of what you might want to start capturing with HED, and what kind of tag you might start looking for in the schema to then try to match it with your events. I think the other thing I wanted to point out is that you can see the value of having a very detailed description in your event JSON file. Even if it's a free from text description, but if you describe your events in a very detailed and concise way, then not only other people can easily understand your events, but also it will maybe be used by other AI tools to help generate, meaningful tags. So that's it for the our annotation tools. We'll be updating this CTagger tools to first able to upload other forms of input source. So as we talked about earlier at the beginning, we will help people able to upload maybe EEG lab set file, but also we're able to upload BIS directory. So you can just take a BIS directory, upload directly. And we will be including other features of HED as well. For example, like annotating definition, selecting library schema. Right now, we only allow you to do the standard schema. And we'll be continuously improving the integration with LLM tools to help further scaffolding the annotation process. But that's it. That's basically the tool they have available to help you with the annotation. And I hope that you guys will start using it and add head tags to your data set.